All right, welcome to another episode of the Critical Introverts podcast. I'm your host, Senor Filth. I'm with Nate Cap, the regular co-host, Benevolent Asshole, and today we have a special guest, from the Andres Segovia show. You want to introduce yourself?
Hey, what's up, everyone? So I'm Andres from the Andres Segovia show. It's where I talk real estate, tech, and general life stuff, and other stuff that doesn't make the main show. I call off the record.
Mm-hmm.
I do that separately, mostly on locals now, where I talk pop culture, political commentary, and special essays. So yeah, I cover quite a bit. But the main show is predominantly driven by my experience in real estate, tech, and general life coaching.
I guess let's just get into like your history, because we did a show on Wednesday, and you were getting a little bit of like you've been doing this for a while. So if you want to just get into how you got started doing this.
Sure. I'll give a quick rundown. In fact, before I even came on, I've been doing how it started series on Instagram every now and then, and today I posted like a montage of that's a chronological. Like chronicling where I've come from. So I started in 2003 doing political commentary, and at first it was called The Kiddo Show, which I then morphed into my name, The Andres Segovia Show. It was a newsletter that morphed into a blog, that morphed into a podcast, and eventually to where I am today. But while I did that, because politics is just exhausting, I also did Hollywood stuff, and I covered it through the Critic Corner. And that's where I did amateur movie reviews. And I think this is what piqued your interest, because I was getting noticed by certain indie individuals within the industry, or that wanted to break into the industry, but also getting the notice of Warner Brothers. And that's where I got invitations to certain films and things like that I got to review for my blog. And I think my favorite part was being able to be smarter than the so-called box office gurus in being able to come up with the box office predictions. So all that is historical archives. I outsmarted the supposed insiders, but I did that constantly into 2010, when I had to retire full time of that as a hobby. It kind of became more of like microblogging. So I guess Twitter, 'cause I like the dawn of Twitter too. So that's when I morphed it to what is called the newsreel, because it felt like a newsreel. And I was just posting just headline news. I wasn't able to give as much time to opinion editorials as I used to, or op-eds as much.
Yeah.
And so then I added a tech segment to it eventually around 2016 or 2017, which I then just brought everything all together again with the Andres Segovia Show banner, because what I did for a living, I wanted to bring it to what I did for fun, because I did the hobbies that wasn't paying me anything, because it was a way for me to release the stress that I kept getting from what I know how to do for a living, but hate doing it, So I found a way to bridge it. So when I relaunched the Andres Segovia Show 3 years ago last week, I decided, you know what? I'm going to leave the politics to the side, but I'll invite people to come on with what I call off the record to have these discussions if they want to. But mostly it's educating people on real estate, which here in California became defending people's property rights. So some people think there's politics involved. It's like, I'm just telling you what's happening at the tax level, at the state level, trying quite literally take away your property rights. And for anybody that's property owner that's seen what's happened with all these draconian lockdown measures, they would know. And especially in Los Angeles and LA County, as yours truly has property in those zones, would can attest to. It's been pretty crazy. So I had to cover that. And then people were telling me I've been getting political. So like, you got to separate. You got to separate what's political opinion versus what's actually on the ground. And I try to educate people, have dialogue, and not have to always get into the shout matches, like talking heads on cable television, because everybody's shouting, nobody's listening. So then I used to do that. I was an activist, and like, I'm done with that. I want to talk with people that actually want to listen, exchange ideas, and come up with solutions. Because we're all Americans and trying to progress forward together. So that's the long and short of that journey.
Yeah, you mentioned that the activism thing. Like, I'm at a point
because when I was younger, when I started getting into this kind of stuff, there was like an activist side in me, but I never like got into that because just the crowd that was like the activist crowd, they didn't really seem like the type that like wanted to fix the problem. They were just more, it was like they were rooting for the Lakers or some shit like that. Like they were just tribal, you know what I'm saying? Like,
Well,
did you experience like anything like within the activist world that like turned you off from it, or?
let's just say I was like a lone voice in the wilderness on college campuses because I went against the grain. I guess here's sharing some personal stuff about me. I was born and raised in a Christian church. That didn't make me Christian until I accepted Christ as my personal savior. So then I became Christian, but I didn't start living for God until my late teenagers. And I guess the trial and tribulations really came when I entered college, because I was in a very dark place in my late teens and my early 20s. Suicidal. I attempted suicide 5 times. I'm still here, so obviously I failed, but that's because God had other plans. So I stuck through it. And when I ventured off to go to university, that was a big deal for me because I hated school. I actually draw a lot of my life experiences into some of my published works through a romantic comedy series called The Many Misadventures of Enoch Bellagio. So a lot of people that know me that picked up the book, they started realizing, hey, isn't he sharing some of his life in this? So some of those pages were shocking to them because we grew up together. So they would call me or text me or DM me through social media and ask me, hey, did this really happen? I'm like, yes. Or if there was some instance where I put in something for a little more dramatic effect to summarize certain events, I told them about it, and they would ask me, why didn't you say anything about it? It's like, well, you have to understand that when you're in a dark place, sometimes you feel you're all alone.
Yeah.
Despite the fact that you're surrounded by a loving environment, loving parents, they never abused me or anything like that.
Yeah.
And like all this, and growing up in a Christian church where I didn't have anything to what maybe people hear as negative happening in the church, I didn't get any of that stuff. So how did this come about? You know, so that I attribute that to what is called spiritual attack. But the point is that the Bible didn't come true to me per se until I entered university, or college and university, because I guess you could say sheltering. Because when you're growing up among your peers, you're saying the same thing to everybody. So there was really no exchange of ideas. It's like, oh, what you think of what was said today? That's pretty much it. It's like, yeah, okay, move on. But at university or college and then university, hearing a lot of different perspectives and that people actually believe things that at some points, like, but how can you believe something like that? It's illogical. I eventually start speaking up, and that is something that was shocking to even people that that knew me, because I was the shy guy in the corner that wouldn't say anything.
Yeah, same
don't
here.
put up on a stage.
Yeah.
And next thing they know, it's like, this guy is he's leading like, I don't want to say I was leading a group of activists, because I wasn't. I was quite literally by myself, but I was standing up for those that were too afraid to talk. So whenever I challenged professors at college, the dynamics of the room would change in the first 2 weeks of college.
Yeah.
Like they would reassemble, and every time I would sit in the front row, and every time I would sit down, some people would tap me from behind, like, "Hey, I agree with you." Like, well, why aren't you guys speaking up? You know, I was like the only voice there. So that's I did get into it until I saw how nothing was changing. People were getting more agitated. And the only time I actually found a reward in what I was doing was my professor, was an English instructor, sat us down and never talked about English, because at the time it was pre-war Iraq and eventually Iraq. So then it was always about anti-war, and I had a different position at the time that I took her on against. So we clashed a lot during class. So this one time I ran into her on campus like a year later, and she remembered me by name. I thought for sure she would hate me. And she told me, I don't forget the face and the name of one of my best students. I'm like, really? Even though we were on opposite ends of this? It's like, no, because you actually defended yourself from a place where you brought facts, even though I disagree with some of those things. You brought that perspective, and you actually listened to me and challenged me on my points instead of belittling me. And I'm like, huh. So that mutual respect taught me that, you know, maybe there's a better way to go about this.
Yeah.
The only ones I've ever actually had to kind of be more combative with were Congress people. I had to do that. And one of them, let's just say she's no longer a congressperson. It was a very disgraceful exit from the district here in Orange County. So
Okay.
that's and I'm glad I brought that up to her at the time. But yeah, so it's changed a lot. And eventually getting married and having kids, I realized I didn't want to put them in harm's way because yes, I've been egged. I've been attacked in my beliefs. I've been named everything under the sun, okay, for being who I am and what I stand for. I had my car vandalized. So,
At school
so like,
or
I've been egged on campus.
Wow.
But my car's been vandalized outside of campus. So
Wow.
it's been interesting.
That sucks, man. How is how is the attitude of like the teachers that you would like I guess challenge? Because when I was in school, which was pretty recently, like 5-6 years ago, they all kind of came off sort of like a lot more smug than you would hope someone that would talk about these kind of things. Like, was there a smugness, or were they a lot more kind of relaxed? Or
it would depend on the instructor. There were some that were passive aggressive, but he was so boring. I'm like, this is not worth my time. The English professor was the most charismatic of them all, but that's the one that I reached mutual respect with. There was a history professor that actually respected what I said too, because I wasn't challenging her during class. We actually spoke after class, and I even wrote essays for her afterwards, and she gave me extra credit for them. I'm like, why you give me credit for this? Like, because you're doing extracurricular work. I'm like, but I'm challenging you. She's like, but I respect what you're saying. Like, that's fascinating. There were two professors, one that I did take and another that I didn't because I avoided him like the plague. He was the worst on campus. He would always open his first day of class, and my brother was unfortunately the one that took him because he's like, oh, I'm going to try this guy. He would always open his class by entering the class, and he would have like this presence to him where it's like he's the dictator of this class. So he would point like, there's the exit there, and there's another exit over there. You bleed red, white, and blue. You're Christian or patriotic, whatever. Get out. I don't want you in here.
Wow.
And it's like, you can get away with that? So it's like, wow. So I avoided him like the plague. But the other professor that I did confront, he was a very smug guy. And we clashed a lot. And it was interesting because I'm like, what does this have to do with business law? Like, where are these topics coming from? But he always found a way to squeeze in his anti-Americanness and all that. And like, hey, I'm first generation American. I just disagree with you, gringo. You know, it's like, and I once challenged him where he just kept ranting and railing against this country. And I'm like, if you hate this country so much, why haven't you moved? And the class was like, ooh. And he's like, well, accidental birth. Like, so?
Yeah.
You still have the means and the ability to move.
Yeah.
What's stopping you? You're free to go if you hate it that much. But I should say there is a professor, and this is at Fulton College. I'm going to drop the name now because I didn't know at the time, but I should have seen all the signs that he was reserved, but strong-willed, conservative, and later I found out Christian. That had the biggest impact in my life. He taught the classes of speech and debate and argumentation. I first took debate and argumentation before I took speech because I'm like, well, I'm always arguing, so I know how to do this. I didn't. So he helped me hone in my skills. So when I took speech class, I'm like, well, I already know how to talk because I know how to debate. Nah, man. I was textbook. That's not how you speak. Like, at least that's not how you do a public speech. And I honed in my skills. He was the only professor I invited to my graduation years later from university. And he was present at my wedding.
Wow.
And he also ended up being a professor to my next of kin thereafter. And he's had a profound impact on them. He was a professor that did it right. He stuck to the topics and taught you what you needed to know. And these are life lessons that all of us took with us. And for me, that was spring and fall 2003. So to this day, I still thank Mr. Cressy at Fulton College. And a shout out to the economics professor, Mr. Francis Mummery at economics. who made economy, as boring as it sounds, one of the most fun classes ever. And that's why I encourage Nate. Hey, whatever science you're teaching, I'm curious. Because if it's physics, I'm there. And if it's not physics, hey, science is still fun.
Yeah. Yeah, that's pretty awesome. Damn, I just lost my train of thought. Holy shit. Do you know anybody that like has gone to college like within the last 5 to 10 years and like compared? Have they told you like horror stories or anything like that? Or I'm curious to see.
Well, it's twofold.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how much of this I'm going to be able to mention, but one, yes, it's worse now than it was before, and another one got swept away by it all, and and I saw that metamorphosis to this good gal, seeing her from her early teens to eventually becoming the best way I could describe is the blue check marks on Twitter that also are blue hair. Yeah. And just to see how much that's happened. And I was explaining to the family that the trajectory that she's on, she's going to end up like this. And they're like, no, she's not. And the parents are now horrified.
Yeah.
I'm like, well, what happens when you go to Berkeley? So it's bad. And someone more recent that actually graduated several months ago, she was like a little here, a little there, and we would clash sometimes because she was my coworker, and eventually she ended up seeing reason, and she's like, "Wow, you're right." Like at first, like, "Oh, because you're older than me. That's a different generation. You know, that's not the same. The times have changed." I'm like, yeah, but values don't actually change in that respect. You know, people still value hard work. And just basic stuff. And she's a family girl. So when I told her the family unit was being attacked, she didn't understand that. And let's just say that she was going into the medical field, and a lot's changed in the past 2 years because of the medical field. And I told her, I don't know how you're going to be comfortable having to ask little kids for their preferred pronouns or their gender and things like that. And it's little kids. So she didn't end up doing that. She ended up getting into working for a vet. And we had lunch recently. She told me, "You're so right. I don't have to ask the pets what their pronouns are."
Not yet. I think that's coming though.
Yeah, it's probably already here. We just don't see it.
Oh man.
Yeah, right.
I guess
that's been interesting.
I guess let's just go into Disney while we're at it, because
you want to go to Disney?
Here we go.
So it's interesting, like how this all happened. Like it first started out from the Florida bill. I can't remember what the name of it is. And there was all this talk about it, and it sort of morphed into this weird snowball of, I don't know, being like up your own ass kind of shit. And now it's gone into like it's kind of tainted Disney, I think, kind of forever for a lot of people. But
well, do you want me to weigh in on that, or your co-host?
I guess let's.
I don't want to be the only one.
I guess whoever wants to jump in, like, how the hell did it, like, how, if any of you guys want to jump in, like, how the hell did it even
I know this
get to
subject
this?
very well, but
I don't.
You don't?
I definitely don't. No.
What about BA? Well, I'm saying BA, but David
or Benevolent?
Oh yeah, just go for it.
Okay.
I'm not sure like what the question was about.
Like how did it start from like the Florida bill itself to now, like, you know, you're seeing like the leaked videos of the Disney stuff, like what they're trying to push. Like how the hell did it all snowball into?
I don't think it's. I'm sorry. I know, like I said, like for him to go, but I don't think it's snowball. It's like very. It's like a strategy that they have, because if you look at everything that's happened, it all happened at the same time with bringing in that new Supreme Court. I forget her name, Ketanji Brown.
Brown Jackson.
Ketanji Brown, the one that's like very weak on pedophiles.
Yeah.
So her, and then with all the other stuff with the bill going on, and the one thing that somebody else brought up, I can't remember who brought this up, is that we're not talking about that the bill is only protecting kids from kindergarten to preschool. I mean, from preschool
Kindergarten to third grade.
to third grade to third
Yeah.
grade.
Third grade, yeah.
Yeah. What about what about the rest? What about the rest of them? It's
Yeah,
like
yeah.
they're just like, it's like a shark. They're trying to get as much. They're
What's-
trying to get as much ground, or like take as much of a bite that they can get on something, and then maybe they might not get the whole thing, but maybe they'll get like the leg.
Maybe.
What's the
So
bill?
It was
the Florida bill.
It was like
The Florida bill, the
parents-
anti-grooming bill.
Yeah, it was like a
Yeah,
parental.
I think it was like I think it was called something like the parental rights bill.
Yes, the Parental Rights Act.
Mm.
What the left tries to call the "Don't Say Gay" bill, even though it says it nowhere in the bill.
Oh,
Yeah.
Okay.
Like, I'll give you guys a microcosm, because I'll invite you all to locals, because I actually had it was a topic I was going to cover on my own, but instead I knew I had to invite someone to speak about this. But this one, I had to do it carefully, calculated, and with someone from that other side of the spectrum. Let's just put it that way.
Mhm.
So we did have a conversation that covers three different aspects of the gay agenda, to put it that way. And I guess I'll give you a microcosm of it, but I would recommend anybody that would like to check it out, they can check it out. And I'll send you guys the link to this privately afterwards. So anybody that knows anything about Disney would know that they actually been and inserting sexual imagery into their content since even the early 80s.
Mm-hmm.
And some of the most infamous stuff comes from the late 80s with phallic objects, quite literally penises, on marketing for the Little Mermaid. There was controversy with the priest that was marrying Ariel and the prince about, was he on his knees or was that just an erection?
Yeah, I remember that.
Where you don't do this by accident. Rescuers Down Under quite literally had a pornographic image on a building. You can go to E-Bomb's World and they'll have an entire list of all the history of where this stuff has happened. So they've been doing it, and the ones that spoke out about this at the time, and everybody said they're just extremists, fundamentalists, was the Orthodox Christian community. They're the ones that were speaking out against Disney since the late 80s, early 90s, and talking about these kind of things, and everybody called them stupid. That's because the technology wasn't there yet. Like, to freeze frame on a VHS, you can't really do it unless you had the actual reel-to-reel thing. But then with the dawn of the internet, then we have YouTube. Not to mention digital means that we can examine frame by frame. And like Lion King spelling out sex when Simba lies down on a bed of leaves. You know, these little things that the church was calling out but judged because, like, you guys are today they would say they're QAnon, like that kind of stuff. It's like, it's been warned about for the longest time. And then to see how Sesame Street was also hijacked and politicized to basically become political talking points and grooming little children, quite literally. I'm sad that I can't share that with my children. I have 3 of my own. You know, and they're like, what's Big Bird and who's Oscar the Grouch? I'm sorry, I wish I could show you the show, but it's not for you anymore like it was for me at the time. And that there's been a history of that happening. The thing is that in the past several years, and you want to talk about wokeness and Senor Filth, you mentioned this on when we did the stream together, that the Gino Carano situation kind of awoken to you a lot in you about that. By the way, if you're familiar with, if you do follow Gino Carano enough, she's around this guy named Jay, better known as Drunk 3PO. This is his shirt. Welcome to the Rebellion. So
yeah, I heard of him.
Yeah. So this is a shirt that he did kind of in response to that, because it became the Rebellion, and it woke up more people to what Disney was doing. And Disney always tried to maintain that wholesome image, but they were using Buena Vista to put like more adult content, and then they would use other subsidiaries where they would put like, they wanted to put the adult stuff, but they left it over there. But they would keep over here like, oh, look, wholesome family stuff. Like, yeah, but you haven't answered the questions about the sexual imagery that you were putting in on kids' movies. What's happened in the past 10 years, and I'll pull up the source material for this for you to confirm, because if in the past 10 years there were at least 35 Disney employees that have been arrested for sexual misconduct, molestation of children, child pornography, including a recent sting in Florida. So go figure that this is not happening. I'm talking about Disney cruises, the parks themselves, the characters. People have brought this stuff up. Nobody was listening, or they just like, oh, that's just ridiculous concerns or a one-off. And now they felt like there's no shame because like, oh, it's the in thing to do. The videos were leaked by, I think his name is Chris Rufo. And he put him on Twitter to just bring all this stuff out because now it's the not so secret agenda.
Yeah.
And it just so happened to coincide with that episode I was telling you about, where I do go in depth into this with a reformed lesbian. So that's why I wanted to speak to this about with somebody that was groomed, that did live the lifestyle, was aggressively prideful in what she was doing and getting others to join the cause to eventually, how did your life shift like that? And what she's doing now. So it's been amazing.
I have like a question for you. I don't know if you know, but I just started thinking about like with these cruises, because I've heard about a lot of that stuff you're talking about. Like, who holds jurisdiction over things that happen in the middle of like nowhere, like in some Virgin Island where there's like no government? I mean, is that the loophole that they kind of like they're milking? It's like, okay, let's just go over here. So
because
like
international waters, huh?
Yeah, international waters. So like these crimes can be committed, and so it's out of our jurisdiction. So the United States can't really do anything. Yeah, we can't really do anything about it. So let them go back to this country. It's okay.
Well, and that's just it, because these are cruises meant to just circle and come back. The ones that are ultimately responsible are these corporations, and these corporations, where are they headquartered? They're headquartered here. So if a plane goes down over international waters, it's still the responsibility of the corporation over here to do diligence to get to the bottom of what happened. If it was a mechanical accident or just a natural tragedy. But the ones that are ultimately fiscally responsible for all this remain the corporations. Same thing with these companies like the Disney Cruise Line or Princess or Carnival. Whenever there's been a shipwreck or anything of the sort, who do they come after? Those companies. That's why they have to have major insurance policies to cover things like this. And when it comes to issues like this, now the main question becomes, what are the hiring policies of these cruise lines? Who are these individuals? Because some of them are questionable as to they don't even speak English, and they're representing in an American English-speaking company. So how did they get the job? And that's where questions have come up, because, well, I don't want to get into that part of things, but that becomes speculation or whatever, but it's not entirely anecdotal. The point is that there are questions and the answering. And when this stuff is caught on tape, these companies need to be held liable for it.
Was there any tape footage of any cruise stuff that happened?
An elevator, I think it was someone from Somalia that was working the elevators, molesting a 12-year-old girl as she was coming into the elevator.
Jesus, wow. That's fucked.
I wish I could make this stuff up, but I can't.
Yeah, man, it's really messed up, man. Because it's like, I grew up, watching Disney cartoons, and Dumbo was like my favorite movie when I was, a young kid, and it's so weird, like what happened to just like the gay community in general. Like from the 90s, it seemed more subtle, and it seemed more about just like there was a love aspect to it, and now it just seems like it's developed. It's just being like just flat out vulgar, and it's like, if I was gay and I saw like gay pride stuff like as it is now, I would even be like, oh god, that's way too out there for me. Like there's a video that went viral during the lockdown. It's really hard to get a hold of now, but it was a video that was put together. It was a song that was oh, you talking about the After Your Children thing?
Yes, the San Francisco Gay Man's Choir. So after the backlash, it said it was satire. It's like, yeah, but who's laughing now?
Yeah.
Look what's happening. That's why, just to make mention, because like I said, it was a lengthy conversation I had with in that episode I dropped on locals. There's a section that I called separating the sheep from the goats from the sheep, because there are the activist side, and then there are those that are living that lifestyle that are trying to keep to themselves. So these activists don't speak for them, and that's why right now we could say the community gets a bad rap because of that.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, there are others, and especially today, because of a lot of the I guess I need to be careful with my words here, but a lot of the media that has kind of made it like the in thing, where it's like, hey, it's the in thing to be this now, and everybody needs to have a coming out story, or it's just, you don't have a life experience kind of thing. And now it's like, sure, there was a poll done a few years ago that was asked how many what the population of the United States do you believe to be gay, and most people thought it was at least a third of America. So they were shocked to know it was about 3%. So 3%, but then you see a lot more representation of them in the media than they are in reality. So it's like, well, my coworker is, but then when you start venturing out of your little bubble of what you live in, you don't run into them, or maybe they're too shy to identify as that. Well, a recent poll now shows that at least I think it was Generation Z or whatever. Now we have 20% of them identify as that.
Yeah.
And the number is going up and entering eventually, not the one that I want to touch on, honestly, because I do have something I'm working on for that, and I want to say my thoughts for that, would be the T in the alphabet. Because now, what about that? Now we're entering a whole other spectrum that wasn't really what the LG was all about.
Yeah.
So,
it's bizarre.
It's been interesting.
Didn't you guys know about the documentary? I think it's called Chicken Hawk. It's like an early 90s documentary. It's about, do you know what NAMBLA is?
No.
It was
Enlighten us, man.
It was like a
sounds familiar. Like what is this?
It was like a National Man Boy Love Association or something like that.
Yeah, I've heard,
but it was a documentary on it, like, and it's a pretty good documentary because it just interviews the people and they just kind of let them speak. It doesn't really characterize them that much. But there's a part where they actually, like the NAMBLA group, go to like a gay pride parade, and the people there at the gay pride were wanted nothing to do with them. Like they were even talking shit about them. And now, like, it feels like it's gone. Now we have the Disney situation, and it's gotten to a creepy. It's just gotten creepy now.
No. How many of you guys are in California?
I just moved from there.
Okay.
You just moved, so you're a Gavin refugee.
Yeah.
I'm still in California.
I bailed.
Well, then let me put it this way. I'll just ask a general question. I want to survey all of you. How many of you know more about Washington politics than your local politics?
I don't know.
Yeah, you probably know more about what's going on in Washington than you know what's happening in your own backyard, right?
Yeah.
How many of you have heard of the state assembly member Scott Wiener from San Francisco?
Yep.
It does sound familiar.
Okay.
I'll be honest.
It should be, because he was responsible for the bill that got authored and passed that you should not ask your partner if they're HIV positive.
Oh, that was okay.
You would want to know that. And the most recent one is the one that basically we call it a decriminalization of pedophilia, because it is lowering the punishment and not letting adults that have relationships with minors up to 10 years younger than them, they will not be forced to register as a sex offender. That was, I think it was SB 145, something like that. Yeah, it was 2020, something like that. And this, so that's why we're like, wait. I thought you guys weren't about pedophilia, but here they're championing this dude, and there was no resistance to the bill. And this was a time when the Republicans were kicked out of the legislature from voting, so only Democrats voted on it, and they own it. And almost nobody knows about that.
Damn.
There was a viral video of a professor that had to be taken down not too long ago, where they call it a map, minor attracted persons, and they were trying to say we got to remove the pedophile label and call it minor attracted person. Like,
I saw that video. It's pretty fucked, man.
How they feel that they won't be held accountable for that stuff. You know,
I think it has to do with like people's over reliance on being compassionate nowadays. Like I've noticed, I think generally with the left, like they have nothing in them to say like I'm fine with this topic, like let's say homosexuality, up until this point. That's when you start to lose me, and like that's why I find myself like having more of these kind of conversations with more admittedly conservative people, because they have no problem with telling you like, yeah, I'm cool with this up until here, like don't cross that line. But like with the left, like they don't have that barrier anymore, and I don't know what the hell happened. Like, when
they don't even know how to define a woman.
Yeah. Yeah, it's I generally have no idea like how that happened. Like, is it like a loss of morals or principles, or?
Yeah,
well,
that's part of it.
Yeah.
Look, you're tapping now into what would come across as religiosity. I want to spell out something, just putting it out there. I hate religion in all its forms because religion is a man-made institution. When I say I'm Christian, it's a lifestyle. So I am imperfect. I'm flawed, but I'm saved by grace. That's how we describe it. And God is real to me because he's made himself real. He's manifested himself. And that's my life experience there in a nutshell. Some other time I might share about that, but the point is that that's where I come from. So if I come across a point of where I'm standing on morals and principles, it's to me they're derived from God, and that's where I stand on them. And being a father now has really woken me up to a lot more understanding that I didn't have. I always hated that expression, oh, when you have a family of your own, you'll understand. I always thought it was a condescending thing to say. I guess because some people said it condescendingly sounding.
Yeah.
But then, I matured and I woke up and like, so now when I say it, I try not to come across as condescending. It's like, hey, look, I got offended whenever anybody told me. And I want to be just very careful when I say, hey, look, there's some things that only come through experience. And that's not to say that there's your truth and then there's the truth. There's your life experiences, yes. It's just that for some, we're yielding more to what is emotionally driven versus what is core truth, because we don't want to hurt their feelings. And when we yield to that, we start yielding more and more because you don't define that. And as I mentioned a little earlier, when I said separating the goats from the sheep, in that episode, I don't want people to think like, oh, I come across hard against just one side. No, in the episode, I'm also addressing the failures of the church in being able to handle this topic more with love and care, because there are individuals that find themselves struggling with it and don't know where to turn to, and they don't feel welcome. And that's not how it should be, especially that's not what Christ called us to be, because he went to the sinners, and it was the morally upright righteous that was complaining, why are you going over there? Why are you eating with those people at those tables? Do you know who you're eating with? And his response was, yes, a doctor doesn't deal with the healthy, he deals with the sick, so I'm going to be over here. I don't need you guys. I don't have to be with you guys. In fact, Jesus took his position harder on those that were coming from a more religious superiority than he was. Because some people don't understand is that some of the Pharisees at the time will be publicly praying, shaming those that were humbly praying next to them. Like, thank you, God, that I'm not like that guy. And Jesus, that's not how you should be praying. And meanwhile, the other person on the floor groveling, asking for mercy from the Lord above. And Jesus is the one that's coming, hey, son, your sins have been forgiven. And the how dare you? Who gave you that authority? That's why they took issue with him, among other things. But the point is that he went with love and care to those people, but he never told them, he never condoned their lifestyle or life choices. He said, go and don't do it again. Be better for it. Yeah. And there were people that changed and others that decided to continue on their lifestyle. That's all a personal choice. The point is, that's what is Christianity. And when it comes to these topics, it is the failure of the church because they're like, oh, we can't talk about sex, it's taboo. But if we're supposed to believe that God created everything, didn't he create sex? It's like, well, yes, it's a beautiful act that man perverted. So why are we afraid to talk about it? I'm not saying the church should talk to this about to kids. That should be a parent's job. But the thing is, they should at least give guidance to the parents on if you're going to approach it from a moral perspective, how would they go about it? And let the parents have the conversation with their kids. Because I had to bring up some things to my kids that they're already under 10, but they've already seen some things, and I wanted to catch it before they ask it. You know, it's like, oh, there's no way they can avoid this. I control the content. We don't have cable television or satellite. So whenever we do have something, it's whatever I cast to the TV that either myself or my wife have chosen to show them. And here's the sad part. Because my wife is, she's Taiwanese. We rarely show them American programming. Everything is overseas. So they can learn the ABCs and the 1, 2, 3s. Go figure. They are trilingual. English, Espanol, and Shongwen, which is Mandarin. So they are learning all three. And I want them to be the better for it, but I also want to tell my kids that even though we disagree with somebody living or saying things that we may not agree with, we do not cast disparaging comments on them or judge them for it. It's like maybe they don't understand yet, or maybe they haven't seen this side yet. So we approach them with love and care as we were commanded to do. It's the aggressors that we have to be watchful and mindful of.
I do think that there's like a weird cause and effect that's happened, like why there's such a division, and like one side has gone so emotional that it's sort of like caused everyone else to like sort of like become more dry, I guess, and like disassociate themselves with any emotion as much as possible. And I guess how would you recommend, like, at least the people that are disassociated with the emotion, like, to try to communicate with the emotional side? Because having these conversations with someone that's mostly on like more left leaning, like, it's becoming impossible because they just have, it's like they heard like there's bad people on a particular subject. So immediately, if someone disagrees with something, they're somehow associated with that bad person, and like the other side, just like I just don't agree for these reasons, and the emotional they can't seem to grasp that. They're like, there's such a tribalistic nature to it.
I would say that, well, first off and foremost, it's a spiritual thing. And when I say spiritual, ghosts, nope, don't believe it. Haunted house or stuck in limbo, nope. That's why I don't watch those movies, and if I do, I'm like, that's not scary because it's stupid. It's like, so you mean to tell me a vengeful spirit stayed behind a house to haunt innocent people instead of actually going to haunt his killer? Who's keeping you to the house? So no, I don't believe in vengeful spirits or ghosts like that. Angels and demons are, yes, because, well, I actually seen angels. That's how I'm still here, near death experience, and demons dealt with them personally. I could tell you that. So when I tell you that this is a spiritual thing, I really mean it is a spiritual thing. There is something where it's what seems emotional comes from a dark place of spiritual blindness that some people will never hearken or hear. Mm-hmm. But the hunger needs to come from within, and that, in a way, I would say, I'm gonna send you guys a link after this. It's like I'm touting that Locals episode. That's because I get into this because I'm talking about a person that was fervently anti-Christian. How did she become someone so spiritual and deep in the faith that she is now? It's like, what happened? And she goes into the breakdown, and I let her speak because I wanted her to tell that story. Mm-hmm. Because where does that come from? And it's to what you're saying, because some people, it closed off. Nope, don't want to hear about it, don't want to know about it. But there's these spiritual boundaries that separate individuals, and sometimes, like in my case, I can only pray, and Jesus commanded us to pray for our enemies, and I've always said that if there's one thing that keeps me out of heaven, I have a hard time praying for my enemies right now, because of the very observations you made, Senor Filth. I can't. Like, you're not coming after my kids. I won't let you. And I can't pray for your well-being when I don't want your well-being. The less of you, the better. That's how I'm coming across. And I've been praying, like, God, take that away from me, because that's not a Christ-like approach. But it's gotten to that point where I feel that way. But that's just me now warring with my emotions. Like, but I have to pray for my enemies. It's just that there are some people that would hunger, and it has to come from, I guess, curiosity in a way, because it goes both ways. There are people that either struggle with something, that want an answer, and they could get a wrong answer and go with it, or like, you know what, that I don't know, that doesn't make much sense, and keep searching until they find the truth. That's why Jesus actually said, hey, seek the truth and you will find the truth, and the truth will set you free. He said, go seek it. And I don't want to come across as proselytizing, but that's going to sound like it, because then Jesus said, I am the way, the truth, and the life. It's like, okay, so when he said seek the truth, he's telling you, go look for it, and I'll meet you right here, because you'll find me then. And that's how I've approached other people too, where some people that were curious about my beliefs and all that, and there's some things where I won't share anymore, because I don't believe you'll comprehend what I'm going to explain to you, because it requires a certain spiritual knowledge of it. But if you are curious, if you are hungry, you will continue your search. And I'll meet you right here where I am. And believe me, some of those, they had that journey and they met me right where I am. I'm like, hey, welcome. What's up? It's like, dude, that was interesting. I'll leave you. I'll cap this with a story of a very famous atheist. His name is Lee Strobel. I don't know if you guys ever heard of it. He wrote for the Chicago Tribune. I think it was the 70s. He was very anti-Christian and wanted to disprove God. And he made it his life's mission to disprove God and Christianity. So he was working on his essay that was going to disprove this. So while he was researching, he found God. Wow. So he wrote the book, The Case for Faith.
Really? Wow.
Like, wait, what? And now he has a church. So there you go. And it's like,
yeah, that's exactly what's happening with this, in this political paradigm, where you have, the left, the mindset is to basically throw anything out that the right has to say, or what the right believes in, typically. It's because they want to hate everything that the right does. They want to create anything to make the right wing mindset go crazy and hate everything that they do. That's what they want. They're creating that. They're creating the anti-Christ, because that's what it is. It's an anti, because it's anti. They are very anti. So they are the manifestation of the anti-Christ. They don't want anything to do with morals and principles. They don't want anything to do with the alignment to natural law or God. Okay, and that's exactly what is happening. But it's all taking place in the mind. See, there's a division in the mind. All of us are politically polarized to one degree or another. But some of us are more moral. See, because it's all degrees. I would never speak in absolutes and say that this thing is
that's okay.
Having trouble focusing. But, it's all in degrees. And that means that there are those who are more aligned with the law of one, or God, or natural law, whatever you'd like to call it. Or there are those who are anti-Christ, or anti alignment to what is right in nature. And there are degrees. There are those who are like really anti everything, where they are complete Satanists. I know that's a very strong word, and it's a controversial word, but that's when I'm talking about Satanism, I'm talking about those who are moral relativists, those who are social Darwinists, who are basically all about me, me, me. You know, just everything revolves around me. I don't have any principle. I don't have any, foundation of morality. And I just make my opinion worth knowledge. And because of this, if you can get enough people in this mindset, then you can definitely create a large divisive war in the mind first, and then it will manifest outwardly. And that's why we have this polarized, right-wing, left-wing dichotomy and war, and it is what is heavily overlooked because most people don't want to go into the realm of trying to understand the mind. Most people want to ignore that which is truth. They don't want to go inwardly. Okay, and so that's why we're in a constant war outwardly, because the separation is the illusion within. And because we have a separation within, we manifest that outwardly, whether we're on, right wing or left wing. But because we're in that division or that divisive mindset, whether we're on the right or left, that's why we find ourselves in these situations. Now, obviously, I can sit here and say, well, I agree with some of the things of both sides, right? But if it's not aligned in morality, if it's not principled, well, then we're not going to be able to get anywhere. We're always going to fight. And I think that I tend to see more of the conservative mindset more aligned in nature to a degree. I feel like, or the libertarian mindset, it's more aligned in nature to a degree, or more aligned with God to a degree than anybody, any kind of, liberal or any kind of like super Republican. I think that it's about understanding both sides, but we can't understand both sides of the spectrum without understanding ourselves, because the mind is everything. If we don't understand what's going on between our ears, we can't really understand what's going on in this manifested, man-made political playground or circus, So I think it's really, like, I really, Andreas, I really think that what you're saying is totally in alignment to truth. I think you're right on it, man. I completely agree with everything you're saying. And, it's crazy how divisive this, especially the media and all the things are hiding in the, product placement and all these, like Disney and everything else. It's to get everybody in this emotional mind control, so they speak from their heart only, without their mind. And when you speak from your heart only, you're not using your mind, and so that's why we clash, because we're coming from more of a mammalian mindset, or an R complex reaction, rather than a neocortex, higher order thinking, deeper thought, conscious way to communicate with each other. Because when you're in an emotional state, you tend to, if that's what you're coming from, rather than your mind, then it becomes very difficult to have a logical conversation and actually get to the bottom of the problem.
Yeah.
And that's, and if we don't have principles first, then we really can't, we're not going to have a solid foundation, and we're always going to have a rocky, destructive war. So
I mentioned this before we starting. It's kind of going along with what you're going with, but like you mentioned like how do we make people consider principles and have that be an attractive enough subject for people to want to pay attention? Because I think a lot of it, like, you're just going to kind of come off as a prude and boring if you're talking about, principles and whatnot. So
yeah,
I think a lot of the problem is that, like, a lot of people just, me included, have no idea how to, bring up principles and stuff like that without having it be engaging enough for people to at least pay attention, to keep paying attention, not just listen to you. Okay, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, you're more susceptible to mind control or manipulation when you have no principles, because I think that's the problem with the left, is that it's like a more selfish sort of while the left is more selfish, the right is a little bit more selfless, or what's that word? The opposite of selfish. Selfless or selfless. That's why. Well, that's the point is, that's why a lot of them end up being or more patriotic, end up going to war, and that's why the left is more for abortion rights. But back to what I was going to say, if you don't have any principles, you're more susceptible to flip flopping and changing your mind and taking cues from the media. So for example, what happened right now, recently with the whole Will Smith thing, was that was just like a subconscious cue to let people know it's okay, if you disagree with somebody, you can just slap them, because already, if you look at the a real life example that just happened recently with Jimmy Kimmel, not even that long ago, I think
Marjorie Taylor Greene.
Marjorie Taylor Greene. She said something about the 3 Republicans that voted for the new Supreme Court justice, the Ketanji Brown Jackson, new justice. She's talking about that. Why do we even vote for these Republicans if they're not doing their job? But anyways, the way that Jimmy Kimmel responded to that is where's Will Smith when you need him? So that's and the point is that people take his side because they're well, okay, because after that he said that, so people just look at that as a joke, because then afterwards, Marjorie Taylor Greene, Marjorie Taylor Greene, the way that she responds, she says, "Well, I'm gonna report you to the police because you're inciting violence, and people can start. It essentially is inciting violence." And his excuse is he's gonna say that, "Oh yeah, it was just a joke." But the problem is that that's all people look at, so they end up taking his side, and then. But the real issue is that we just allowed somebody that is weak on prosecuting pedophiles, some of the pedophiles that she let go, or she didn't let them go, but she reduced their sentences from years to months. And these are pedophiles that actually were watching, that had on them pedophilia, where there's it's not just we're not just talking about kids, we're talking about babies.
Was any of this all the people that are celebrating her, is this anything that they reported on, or did they just gloss over?
Well, all they did was just say that anybody asking questions of Ketanji Brown Jackson, define a woman or about pedophilia, they called you a racist. That's the default card now. That's it. Everything you ask is racist. Don't go against the narrative.
I just say that I'm a racist from now on because it's easier. It's so much easier to just say I'm a racist.
Great, there goes my career.
Yeah.
My career.
Like,
I'm on a stream
what
with
are
a
you gonna do?
racist.
Yeah.
We're not looking at people's character anymore. It's like, who cares if they're like a white or black? That's not important. What is important is their character. We're not looking at that anymore.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, because it's a materialistic mindset.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Diversity
all,
checkpoint.
huh?
A diversity checkpoint.
Yeah, exactly. But man, I was trying to remember what you said earlier, Senor Filth. I was trying to remember. Damn, you said something, but
well, you want me to ask the question again? I was just saying, like, how do you make principles more attractive for people to like want to learn more about, you know?
Right. I did have an answer for that, and I would say here's my question to you specifically.
Mm-hmm.
Is, do you see, because I think just like anybody I've ever talked to, who I always try to tell them, you know, if you spread this type of information and truth, and like I spread information that I know to be beneficial and helpful and can, you know, help build a better world, especially spiritually. Well, then if I'm sharing that with someone and then they come up to me and they say, well, you know, that's cool, Nate, that you want to do that for the world, but what makes you think anybody else is going to change? But see, what I have to say to someone who says that is, are you going to take what I'm saying and take it serious and actually do the work on yourself? Because here's the thing, I'm not, and this isn't any disrespect. I just wanted to bring this up because it's a common thing that I hear, that like if somebody says that, I think it's important to recognize that we each are individually responsible for our own actions in the world, and we are the change that we wish to see. So that means that, like, yeah, I agree with you 100%, that it would be better to make this type of information, especially something as boring as principles or like Andreas's economy information. It's like, if you can find a way to make it more interesting and more palatable, and funny, even more entertaining, then of course it's going to do better. But then the question that I have for anyone who has that question is, are you going to actually do the work and take it serious? Because I'm trying to reach, for me, it's like, man, it's hard enough. I'm obviously like, I'm not like a quick on my feet, witty, funny person. I just never really have been. I'm a goofy person. Once you get to know me, I'm a silly, stupid, old goof.
Yeah.
But the thing is that to try to incorporate, it's like, it's already so much work to be able to put this information out there in a way that is so structured to explain in the most simple way possible. And then try to think of like, how am I going to make this entertaining on top of that? It's a lot of work, and I already have so much in here that I'm trying to extrapolate in the best way possible. And it's like, you know, I personally am trying, like, you know, I'm glad that you brought that up, because one of the things that I really want to do is, you know, do some, you know, artistic ways of expressing, well, and I kind of have, you know, I don't know if you saw my, what is it? My prison or schism prison with the clown.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
I do my art like that. And that's one of my ways of expressing that I think is more palatable for people. But for videos, it's like I'm learning this new program, Final Cut Pro. Well, it's new to me, but I'm learning how to edit the videos and try to make them, interesting to watch. But then I'm thinking, like, how can I add like effects, and how can I add, some kind of humor in this? And it's just, it's very difficult. And I completely agree with you. But at the same time, I'm asking the question, are you going to take this information serious? Because because we're all on this unique individual journey, and it's not about everybody doing something. It's more about you doing it, and hopefully we inspire others to do the same. Right. So that's all.
I actually kind of want to weigh in on this a little, because
Go for it.
I think the question is a little twofold from Senor Filth. This actually kind of reminds me a little bit of the Curious Joel approach, the other one that was on the stream that we were on, because he wants to ask questions. And what you're doing on your program is doing just that. You're asking questions because it seems like you're trying to get to an answer. So I think it's twofold. One where it's applied to your personal, and the other one applied to what you're trying to do as a content creator.
Right.
What Nate was explaining, especially on the content creator side, I could tell you that being authentic is the best thing you can be instead of trying to be somebody else.
Yeah.
I've been called everything under the sun. You asked me what kind of hate was I getting on Gab on the stream. And all I could tell you is that if I say something that is not in line with whoever is listening, it doesn't even matter if it's on Gab, YouTube, or somewhere else, someone's going to have issue with whatever I'm saying. Like, come at me, bro. I'm just being me, but there was one insult that actually did offend me. And while I laughed it off, later on, I'm like, where did I give this person the impression that I was this? I was called fake. And I'm like, whoa, man, I have hours of content for you to look at. And if you actually check some stuff out, the first thing I'll tell you is, if you meet me and it's like, man, Andres he's nice, he's kind-hearted, he helps out, he's patient, he's a model son, great. But if you come across me and you see, man, he's rude, he's abrasive, he's in your face, he yells a lot, he's very emotional, and I'll say, you're right. When you meet me is how you're going to meet me. I'm a man, I have emotions, and I can be all over the place. It's just some people will get different impressions of me, but it's all me. But when it comes to me being on a program where I'm divulging information, having conversations with others, I'm trying to keep my emotions in check. So if people want me to be more passionate in your face, I'm not going to do that. I'll probably get some clicks for it, but it's not going to look good if someone cuts it up and makes it like unflattering to me, like they do to Joe Rogan. But that's the content side. And I found that my episodes where I've been most authentic are the ones that's how my show took off. I had 250,000 views on one video just because I was comparing two phones. I was doing tech at the time. I was comparing two phones and my dog was interrupting. It's just, I didn't do any edits. And I just put it up there. I'm like, this thing became the hit. Not all the other stuff I was trying to do, like flashy edits, adding overlays, and this and that. Not those. The one that took hours to do didn't get as much views as the one that people like. I wanted to see that because the content. So you create the content. Yes, they will come because people like you that are curious are going to ask the questions and look for that. Learn to the hashtags and the SEOs for search engine optimization, and then you're going to get it. Now, when it comes to the personal stuff, like, okay, how can I sell them on this? Here's the thing that we have about an issue with this left and right issue, this political polarized world that we live in. Politics is a religion unto itself too.
Yeah,
I've been about 20 years, and this is where my English professor said, "You're onto something." I said, "This feels like a religion. It's either you're on this religion or you're on that religion." You know how you're groomed or manipulated into believing something is when you think you're coming to your own conclusion, but instead you're being led to that conclusion.
Yeah.
Who does it very well? Jehovah's Witnesses. They don't speak statements to you in statements. They ask them in the form of questions. So if I ask you, what would you like to eat? And it's an open-ended question, right? But if I ask you, what would you like to eat? Sushi or Chinese food? Now I've given you two things, and I'm hoping you're going to pick one or the other.
Mhm.
Or I could ask you like this. If I knew you didn't like sushi, I'd be like, what would you like to eat? Sushi or Chinese food? Now
Yeah.
I'm trying to guide you to an answer, right?
Mhm.
And you think you got to that conclusion. What we find ourselves at odds with is being able to agree on something, the foundation. If we cannot even define, if we cannot get the definition of words, what are we talking about? We cannot define a woman anymore? Or are you a biologist? Are you? Why the hell are you asking me? So I have no doubt about me being a man. Are you questioning yourself? Like,
Yeah.
I could throw it all right back at them.
Mhm.
That's because they're trying to overthink things to make you feel stupid. They're trying to make you feel like everything that has been since the dawn of man, everybody's known. But now it's like, oh, you're stupid for thinking that. That's Neanderthal thinking.
Mhm.
Why? Because you think you reach some nuance that actually clashes with reality? Isn't it interesting how the animal kingdom, that if you believe we evolved from it, that there are only two genders there? You know, it's like, stop it with this trying to overthink things. So at the core, everyone actually has something they believe in, even if they haven't even discovered it. So
Mhm.
it's not about you selling you. It's about at least them seeing themselves. So if someone's gonna say, "Yeah, I believe in wealth distribution," it's like, also, how much money do you donate to charity or do you give to the homeless? Like, oh, well, not my money. Like,
Yeah.
oh, so you want someone else's money? So you mean, like, why wouldn't you give any of your money? Well, I worked for it. Yes, tell me more. It's like, so now you turned it on them. It's not about you being on the defensive. That's what I always complain about Christendom itself, and even some weak spine Republicans and conservatives. Because the Republican Party, this is their approach. They'll run on conservative values to win the election. As soon as they win, they throw the conservatives out and say, we got to meet in the middle so we can win. If that were so, the Democrats would not have changed their tone this year, because they know they're going to be, the floor's going to be wiped with them later this year if the systems are in check for the elections. But if they're concerned about that, the tone changed. All of a sudden, what mandates? What are you talking about? COVID? I don't know if I just brought the whole stream down because I dropped that. But the point is that now they changed the tone. Like, that State of the Union speech was almost word for word what Trump said.
Yeah.
So no, I'm confused. What's going on here? So what are they doing? They're running on conservative principles to win the election. As soon as they win it, they go back to what they're doing. It's like, so stop judging people what they're saying, judging about what they do. There are people that are speaking because they think that's what they have to say. There are some people that are NPCs. Anybody out there that knows video games, non-playable characters. But there are other people that they're going with the grain, but they're like, yeah, because I was told to say this. And when you start challenging them on it, it's like, huh, interesting. There's a guy named Ami Horowitz. I don't know how many of you are familiar with this guy. He does some Ami Horowitz. He does some digital shorts.
Is he from, I think, Reason TV? I think.
No, but I think he might have contributed to Reason, but I know he contributes to the Daily Wire. He's not with the Daily Wire, but he's contributed to the Daily Wire. He does these man on the streets interviews, and one of his two of these most recent ones. The most recent one was going to New York and asking people there if their minds had changed about the Second Amendment, the right to bear arms, because the country of Ukraine is giving guns to its citizens to defend themselves from the Russian invasion.
Yeah.
And people here that were against, he wanted to specifically speak against those that want to ban guns. And then some of them said, yeah, we should even ban guns from the police. Whereas some other people were like, it's made me rethink things. Like, interesting. And so people are coming to that. Then you another episode that he did where he went to Berkeley and was taking donations for Hamas. So, and he was, in other words, he was collecting donations for a terrorist group. And he was literally saying what he was going to do with that money. And he was getting donations. Like, oh my goodness. Like, just, he's pointing out the absurd by being absurd. But he's also asking honest questions to people to have them think. And there's people that will think.
Mark
there
Dice
are those that won't.
that too.
Mark who?
Who does?
Mark Dice.
Oh, right, Mark Dice. He's pretty big.
How do you spell his last name? D-I-C-E?
Yeah.
I
heard
seen him.
He's really funny. He lives in San Diego, and he's hilarious. The way, I mean, he's funny, but he's he points out the absurd by being absurd, and he's the questions that he asks. I mean, especially during this whole scamdemic, he was really just like getting people to say some of the most brutal, absurd, vicious things, to sign, basically just sign a piece of paper stating that, they'd be willing to, have people put in jail just for
I saw that one.
not having their shot to, stay in order to stay in their apartment. Like it's crazy. But he's really good at it. Another awesome on the street person.
A lot of the stuff that's been happening here in the States, though, like all this polarization that you've been seeing, anybody that's actually been paying attention would notice, just like with Disney, like how did this happen? Well, it's been happening. There are conspiracy theories out there. I'm not talking about conspiracy theories. I'm not the Alex Jones type. I believe he has the right to say what he has to say, but if he has a platform where he could bring harm to other people, it's like, keep that stuff in check. But if someone can still speak, I would say go ahead. You can speak even if I disagree with you. But there are some things. There are actual, in my case, a lot of stuff that's been happening. It's like, well, where did I hear this before? Oh wait, yeah, I read the Bible. So a lot of this stuff has actually been told about. Now, my parents were born and raised in El Salvador. They met here in the States and they got married here. I'm first generation American. The stories they would tell about the war with Honduras, and then subsequently the very bloody civil war with the uprising of communism in El Salvador that was happening there. For my mother as a young girl, probably my daughter's age or younger, having to go to school, walking over mutilated corpses, decapitated bodies, or one of the worst stories she ever told me wasn't about the dead body. It was about I don't know if it was a police officer or a soldier from the government that was captured by the guerrillas, and they were torturing him at night, and the guy screaming bloody murder. And my mom and her little siblings listening to all of this happening and left them out there to die. Those guys just tortured him but didn't kill him. They were leaving out there to die. They tied him to a tree and they left, and them having to see what they did to that body, and the guy's still alive. These kind of things, I'm like, wow, wouldn't this do something terrible to a person that's psychologically speaking? Not to mention the guy that needed to be put out of his misery too. But why is it that my mom didn't have suicidal tendencies? Instead, she was driven more to protect her sisters, because at that point, she was basically raising the kids on her own when my grandparents left the picture. And with all this going on, I never heard about a war-torn country where kids were committing suicide because, I can't take this anymore. But the United States has the highest rates of suicide in the entire world.
Yeah.
Why here? Is it first world problems? I go back to this whole thing being spiritual. It's a very spiritual condition that we have here. And this expression is called to each their own. Because if you're going to attack your enemy, you're not going to attack them to the most obvious defense that they're already preparing for. You will hit them at their weak points. So you will study their weak points. And here in the United States, we are fortunate enough to have oceans being our borders at two sides, and then a peaceful, for the most part, country before they went all authoritarian with this whole COVID restriction with Canada. And what nobody talks about, the bloody civil drug war down across the border that's spilling over our borders here. But we've had those protections, which is why 9/11 shocked a lot of people. It's like, it could come to here. We cannot rest on our laurels and think that we'll always be defended. But it is this spiritual thing that is happening here. And when people are searching for the answers, some of them are swept away by false teachings, or they find the truth, or maybe a truth that suits them, at least for a little while, before they continue down that road.
Yeah, it feels like right now, like a lot of people I've tried to talk to, it feels like they've just gone with the first thing that sounds good to them, and then they just hold on to it and never question whether it's genuinely right for them, or offer some kind of counter. It's very odd. And I'm someone that I like to take my time with anything and then make my decision. But it seems like people from day one, from they were in high school or whatever, they thought something was good, and now they're in their 40s and they haven't changed. They haven't moved on from just citing that script. You know what I mean?
Arrested Development.
Yeah.
Well, it's I think there is having values and principles, a moral center, and if that's something that's a mainstay, great. But if there's something that says that, yo, vanilla ice cream is the best thing ever, I'm never gonna try any other ice cream because there's no better ice cream than vanilla. It's like, but how do you know you didn't try it? It's like, now that's stubbornness, you know. So it's about understanding like what can and should change versus the tried and true that, hey, if it isn't broken, don't fix it. So that's I guess that's what I'll respond to in that.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess we're kind of running out of time. You want to talk about anything about dealing with crypto? Because, like I said in the stream, I know next to jack shit about it. So, I mean, if you want to put your 2 cents,
I'll point you guys to an episode I did where I interviewed somebody that's all into crypto. That's very well versed in it. But for the layman that knows nothing about it, it's quite literally what I describe as illusionary value. It gets a lot of bad rep because they, oh yeah, it's the dark web. Do you guys even know what the dark web is, or are you just once again using words loosely and things like that? But it really comes to a way to what is called decentralizing currency, where it's not run like in the United States. We got the Federal Reserve pumping out money. That's why the dollar is particularly worthless. Ever since we left the gold backed standard, the dollar is worthless. It's not worth what it was worth before. But so long as you trust that dollar is worth $1, okay, then I'm fine with it. That's exactly how people conduct themselves, where it's like it's a barter thing. It's a trust system at this point until it becomes we're like, no, I don't trust that dollar anymore. But the reason people were moving more toward like trying other currencies because like, what about the digital dollar, like cash? Because that's cash, a transaction where it's untraceable, so to speak, and something you don't have to report to the government. I'm not saying don't do it. I'm just saying that's just how people treat it. Like, I don't have to report to the government. That's what some people think that, well, if everything's moving digital, why not have, or shouldn't there exist a way to have a digital currency akin to cash? And while it's technically not regulated because it's on these centralized ledgers, which is so weird because it's public and you have to be able to read it, it's still technically public. So it's like, so everybody's seeing what you're doing with the funds. So and so distributed to so and so. Here's the serial number, and here's the BTC, like if it's Bitcoin, the Bitcoin transaction, and it's like, fascinating. But it's a very complicated thing, and Bitcoin is the one that's the most popular of them. It's not the only one. There's thousands of them. It's just a matter of like who trusts what more. And China did back Bitcoin, which became bigger. And El Salvador, my home country, is the first one to actually adopt it as official currency at a national level. Which I'm like, wow, a third world country, a developing country that is forward thinking. That's huge. And over here, it's like, how do we regulate and tax this? Because they want to tax every penny that we have. But it's some people say in the case of Bitcoin, because like, well, if there's a certain set amount of Bitcoin, I don't understand that. How do you make a certain set of Bitcoin and you have to mine for it? Okay, fine. I don't know who determines the set. Like, let's say there's 1,000 Bitcoin and there's no more than 1,000 Bitcoin. Who then determines that? I don't know, but you have to mine for it. And it's the mining aspect of things that require a lot of computer resources to do all these algorithm calculations to get to it. That is making places like run the electricity bill, or like what they call destroying the environment. And that's why Bitcoin gets a bad rap, because that's one way to get that. And people say it's bad for the environment, don't go Bitcoin. I'm not in that world. I until it stops being so volatile in value, then maybe I'll jump into it. But I just see like non-fungible tokens like NFTs, where it's illusionary, everything. So if anybody has concerns about the World Economic Forum and the guy who runs it, Klaus Schwab, he's the one who said, you will own nothing and be happy. The same thing with Bitcoin, same thing with NFTs. It's like, oh, look at my digital creation, but if it's not tangible, I can't touch it. Then what's the point? It's not a Pokemon card. I can't lift up like this. I turned the Surface Duo into a Pokédex. So I'm like, I can't hold it. I can't touch it. But it's like, but I can say I have a digital stamp saying this is the original digital creation. Holy smokes, I can just screen capture it and say I have the same thing, but you don't have the serial number for it. It's like, but I can't do anything with it. And some people think that, yeah, with Bitcoin, I beat the government. Okay, so if the internet or the electricity is disconnected, what then can you do with it?
Yeah, that's a big issue I have with it. Like, once, it's disconnect, like the internet's disconnected. Like, what do you do? Are you just fucked?
Exactly.
Or I mean, I'm pretty sure there's people that have answers to that, but I like.
Oh, probably.
Yeah.
But it's kind of like the idea of here in California. I mean, it's genius. We have a drought. We have trillions of gallons of water being swept away to the ocean. Like, why instead of damming it and using it? No, because the smelter can't swim. We have to get rid of 4 hydroelectric dams. Okay, so we're not going to be able to power the power grid because we're going to shut down these dams? Yes. Okay. And what do you want? You want to get rid of all gas-powered vehicles by when again? But you want to increase electrical usage? How are we going to supply the grid that has constant brownouts? That's, oh my goodness. You call that progressive or forward thinking? Talk about stupid. So it's like when there's no electricity, what then do you do? It's like, it's not going to help you. And no, I just won't buy into it. And I don't mean to take a little control of your show because I too have to go, but I brought some props that I wanted to share with you because you asked me something during the last stream. So if you don't mind, unless you have another question about it, then I wanted to switch here.
Go for it.
Well, I still got a little bit of time for the stream. I mentioned I did something called the Critic Corner. That was an amateur movie review. So I actually collected everything, compiled everything into a binder that it was originally called, if anybody knows an inside humor to how scripts are written, it was called How I Went to the Theater This Past Weekend to Waste My Time and Money, or the Critic Corner. So that's how it was. I had co-hosts on that one, and all my collections are collected here. I did articles of sorts. I even did Batman versus Superman before it was a thing, way back when, as to comparing Batman Begins to Superman Returns, and I did it with another author. Yeah. And I think that's when I started getting the attention of Warner Brothers, because I became part of the viral campaign for The Dark Knight. And when I say viral campaign, I don't know if people understand what that means, because they think, oh, so you just help promote the movie. Yeah, but in a different way, where we were rewarded for promoting the movie. There was a marketing campaign within the marketing campaign, and it was mostly for the fans. And you guys can't see it, but I have everything Batman decked out here. Okay, so my question to you is, who is the best superhero and why is it Batman? And when we got involved with this viral campaign, it was like, so what do we get? We get these rewards and things. So we're basically marketing amongst ourselves, but it was also a treasure hunt. And we were the first to see, go with clues. It was almost like mining for Bitcoin in a way, where we were putting together these clues online that would then reveal something. And it was Heath Ledger coming off the makeup chair for the first time as the Joker. So it was the famous picture of the silhouette of the camera from down here, as they see the introduction of him. That was him coming off the makeup chair, but it was the black and white picture, and we were the first to see it. And like, holy smokes, this is crazy. Later on, I ended up getting a prop from the set. This is the Gotham Times.
Oh, tight.
The Gotham Times. So this is the first printing. But they actually made an entire newspaper. They wrote articles, like legit articles, just for this stuff. I'm like, didn't you guys just blow these things up? Like, technically, that's what they did. And then they actually had if you guys, of course, you guys see The Dark Knight with Heath Ledger in it, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because you guys said no, I'll drop off the stream right now. But before the movie came out, in the movie, there's the Gotham. It's like the GCC, and there's like this talk show host having like a night news show, and he would have.
Sounds familiar, yeah.
Yeah, so there's this moment like in the movie where this guy's I'm gonna tell you who Batman is. I know his secret identity, and then Joker calls into the show. That isn't just for the film. They filmed a bunch of little segments. There's about 10 episodes that they did that were done. The one before the movie came out was where Aaron Eckhart's Harvey Dent came on the show. Mm-hmm. And during the show, they're getting a breaking news thing where someone's holding somebody hostage. And this is where Harvey Dent goes out into the crowd and exchanges himself for a negotiation. Let the person go, I will be the hostage. And in the film, they refer to him as the White Knight, but people don't get it, that there's an entire history that we as fans actually got to be a part of that people didn't get, that were inside references to us. Mm-hmm. It was like an entire experience just made for us. Now, I didn't get this because I wasn't in Colorado, but those fans that went all the way out there were able to get the second trailer of the film, the second trailer where they first revealed the Joker, they were able to get the actual reel to reel,
Wow.
but vandalized by the Joker. So he has the whole thing vandalized. Like when you're watching it, it's like he's in juxtaposed with all this like graffiti. They're lucky. I didn't get to do that part, but at least I got stuff like this, and that was pretty cool. So I ended up being invited Universal City Walk. It was a private showing for us, and Warner Bros. Invited us. So when they did that, they said I could bring up +1. And like, can I bring 3? And they're like, okay, fine. I was the only one that had a +3. So that was cool. I don't forget it. That was 3 days before the movie came out, and I had the review up that night on the Critic Corner, and it's still up on my blog today. So that was awesome. Great time. Just I wanted to get that out of the way because we brought it up on my stream, and I'd be remiss if I didn't bring it up.
We don't have that much time, but like maybe we could do for another time. Like what's your views on like the DC cinematic universe? Like
cinematic.
Yeah. Compared to the Dark Knight trilogy to the newer stuff.
This is called Absolute: The Long Halloween. I sold my other Absolute ones. You'll never see me sell this one. This is my favorite comic book, graphic novel. Tim Sale, Jeff Loeb are my favorite team. Yeah, that's why Daredevil, the show, is so awesome because Jeff Loeb was behind it. I feel that Zack Snyder's vision has aged way better than Marvel Cinematic Universe has, especially Watchmen. It was ahead of its time. What I don't like, because you can still see it, is that Warner Brothers was definitely trying to shoehorn in their way to the Justice League. And I thought Zack Snyder doesn't have a plan. And I think his cut of the Justice League proved that it did. And I actually did have an entire segment about this for my podcast, where I really go into depth as to why that is. But we never got a Superman sequel. And we'll never ever see that realized because Superman never became Superman. Just like with Christopher Nolan's Batman trilogy, Batman didn't become Batman until he was no longer Batman. So it was an entire arc of him becoming Batman. Now, I would have done The Dark Knight Rises differently. I would have done it in 2 parts: The Dark Knight Falls and The Dark Knight Rises. But if you just keep the film to fix it, I would say get rid of the opening scene, as much as I love it, and just start with him being in prison, and then just do editing, and it'll be a better story for it. But now we have Robert Pattinson's Batman.
Is that good? I have not seen that. Is it good?
I haven't seen it either.
I can tell you that you might enjoy it. I just think it has an identity crisis, but I think my brother put it best. He called it authentic Batman. And yes, I've wanted to see Batman do detective work.
Yeah.
Because he hasn't done it. But here's what I loved about the movie. I'm not saying I loved the movie, but I'm saying what I loved about it. It's basically this book come to life. So like, oh, this is so good. But I have to question, because there's some fans have asked the question, was the film towards the end trying to say something against certain people that don't vote in a certain way? Because it did feel it was a little heavy-handed, but I didn't want to read too much into it. So I'm like, I'll try to take up myself outside of that. So that's like the only thing. That's why I feel it didn't identify itself well. But the history of that movie was, it was supposed to be Ben Affleck directing. He was writing it and starring in it. And I'm like, that better be one of the best Batman movies ever, maybe the best. But then we found out that he actually was having marital issues and he was really hitting the bottle hard. So he stepped away from directing. That's when Matt Reeves was brought in. So he was writing the script and he was going to be in it, starring in it. Ultimately, we know how that turned out. He had to drop from it entirely. But the way the film was supposed to go was supposed to be Arkham Asylum. So if anybody's familiar with Arkham Asylum, the graphic novel, and then the video game that was inspired by it, it was supposed to be a psychological study, and that's what I wanted. So my main criticism of The Batman is that what Matt Reeves tried to achieve, he got the tone, but it became watered down because it had to be PG-13. Like, that's why I hate it. It's PG-13. Either go all in or don't even try it. And that's what I didn't like. But it is even more grounded in realism than Nolan's version was. So if you like that, you'll love it. Yeah, because it's very gritty.
Yeah, I do like Matt Reeves' movies because he did the Planet of the Apes, the the reboot Planet of the Apes movies, and I think
Okay,
that's one of the
that was
better. I think that's one of the better trilogies that come out in a really long time.
It was really good.
He did Cloverfield, but I don't really like that movie. But,
It was his first though.
yeah,
It was
yeah,
his
yeah.
first foray.
I guess.
Did you throw up?
Yeah. Are we going
Yeah.
too far?
I definitely was a little dizzy.
And I mean, I have a question of like, who would you consider like the best cinematic Batman?
Ooh.
Because for me, visually, like as far as like who I picture, I think Val Kilmer to me, I think is visually like
Interesting choice.
the movie's god awful. I'm not saying.
Oh, dude,
it's
I
good.
recently watched it and it has aged very well.
Yeah,
if you
is it?
watch it
Oh,
again now
I
and
know,
watch it
man.
in 4K, you're gonna be sitting back and you're like, Mark Zuckerberg? That's what you're gonna think. I'm like, whoa, this movie was ahead of its time. Like, silliness aside, there is actually in the works, and there's rumors that this might happen, and we're looking forward to it as Batman fans.
Mhm.
The Schumacher cut, because the way the film was supposed to start was with Two-Face breaking out of Arkham Asylum. So with the movie ending with a visit to Arkham Asylum to find the Riddler in there, it was supposed to be like a symmetrical like storytelling there.
Yeah.
And we were supposed to actually look into why Batman, or in this case Bruce Wayne, didn't want to be Batman anymore because of his burdens. You can actually find those deleted scenes. And when you see them, they are dark. It's depressing. You're like,
Yeah.
dude, why'd you cut this out? And yeah, it's zaniness and silliness, maybe, but that's one of the best looking Batmobiles too. However, it's aged considerably better. I watched it before going to watch the Batman, and I found myself like, wow, this is actually pretty good. I mean, yeah, zaniness aside, but how many of us end up saying, riddle me this, Batman?
Yeah.
Thank you, Jim Carrey. So you still have to attribute something to it, right? Even though that Two-Face wasn't Two-Face. Cinematically,
Yeah.
this is a controversial choice. My favorite Batman is Michael Caine.
Michael Keaton.
Okay, that's
Michael Keaton?
Michael Keaton. I'm thinking about the guy who wrote it. The guy who wrote it. No, but it's Michael Keaton. He's the one that
You mean
that
like
to me is my favorite.
Performance wise or visually or all of it?
All of it, because he was the eccentric Bruce Wayne
Mhm.
and can be Batman. But if
Mhm.
you're going to talk about just solely Batman, Ben Affleck hands down.
Hmm.
I was blown away because I expected him to do good. I didn't expect him to be freaking awesome. It was a battle-worn Batman that kicked butt. And I've always said, when I heard he was going to be cast, I was disappointed. Like, so we're not going to get the action scenes of a really cool Batman thing. And then the warehouse scene happens in the
Yeah.
Dawn of Justice. Like, everything I've ever wanted to see. It was so freaking awesome. So yeah, that scene almost single-handedly saved that movie, but the director's cut's better.
The Batman vs Superman.
Yeah, if
Yeah.
you see the director's cut, you'll see how much was left out.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I say about Zack Snyder. If you leave his vision, you'll get it. The theatrical versions suck. Watchmen, if you watch the director's cut, it's actually almost 4 hours long,
Mm-hmm.
and it puts for those that read the comic book, put the comic book in there. I love it until the end because they changed the ending. But his vision, it's like, dude, you know how to bring the panels of a comic book to life. That's what I respect about him.
Mm-hmm.
But he needs to be guided
Mm-hmm.
because he only storyboards so much. But for a visual Batman, it is Ben Affleck, and unfortunately, he didn't get his Batman film that I really wanted to see.
Yeah.
Because Matt Reeves defined his Batman as the strongest Batman, but Robert Pattinson refused to hit the gym, and it showed. Even my wife is like, "Is he anorexic or anemic?" I'm like, "Robert, what happened? You look bigger in Tenet, man." So, yeah.
I guess
So
for
that's
me,
the
like
long-
why I like Val Kilmer visually for like he just has like a really good like asshole face, and that's why I think he fits.
I know you said that.
Do you mean benevolent, or you're talking about Val Kilmer?
He has like that
I'm
jerk
glad-
face that like I just see Bruce Wayne having really good, but that doesn't make a Batman Forever or whatever good. It's not.
Well, I would say check it out again.
I have
You
been
might
curious
see a
to
little
like
different.
rewatch the Tim Burton ones and the original
4K.
because I just haven't
4K.
seen them. I think since
Watch
they
them
were
4K.
out. So yeah.
And I was gonna say, like, I would have to agree with like the Michael Keaton, like
Mhm.
as far as Batman, especially I don't know. I wish there was like more fighting scenes, but I think in terms of like getting lost in the character as being Batman and just having that facial acting,
Yeah.
like is just like awesome. Like his mouth and just like his movement is like just like perfect. And
Yeah,
that was always like my favorite Batman growing up, and even with like all the other ones like that they've done since then. I don't know. I just love that Batman.
I would say George Clooney is the worst. He was
Who?
George Clooney.
It never happened. It never happened. Okay.
I actually do like watching that one because it's so bad. Because it's
Yeah.
Man, I can't touch up the 10-foot pole, man.
They're like ice skating in one part. It's just embarrassing. But
I know, right?
Yeah, man. Anyways,
that one has Robin, right?
Yeah, Robin and Batgirl. There's like, it's not.
The worst puns ever. Nice to meet you.
It's not good.
That was terrible. I did get to see the Batmobile though, so I'm proud of that.
The Batman and Robin?
No, the original. No. The original Tim Burton Batmobile.
Oh, okay.
That was the experience, man. Oh, that was awesome. I'm like, it's right here. Oh, it was so cool.
Yeah, just like this whole setting. Yeah, the whole setting too of it being like in Christmas too. Just like the contrast of the grittiness and just like it's supposed to be Christmas, but then you see like it's just I don't know. I just thought it was like an awesome movie because of all that.
I'll say this much: Batman Returns is the definitive Batman film of all the cinematic stuff that we've seen. People complain that this Batman movie is too dark. I'm like, did you guys even see Batman Returns? That thing is highly depressing, but it is Batman. Tim Burton made Gotham City a character unto itself. That's the criticism of the Nolan movies. Gotham is just another city. But in the Batman, Gotham is very much a part of this. But if you want to see like everything kind of bridging to like it's kind of like an homage to the comics, it is the Michael Keaton Batman movies. But Batman Returns is definitive Batman. Character driven, great storytelling, super dark, and it's more gross than anything this Batman movie has to throw at anybody. So that is something that I recently watched in 4K, and I was swept away. Like, holy smokes, it's a whole other way to see it.
One complaint for the Nolan trilogy I have, and it's the worst. I think it definitely has the worst Batmobile. It just looks like a loaf of bread. I don't like it.
It's like they try too hard to like reinvent.
Yeah, it looks like a bolillo or something like that, like one of those Mexican.
You're talking about the tumbler?
Yeah, I know. I don't like it. It's just like a big hunk of something. I hate it.
Well, it's supposed to remind you of a bat, right? Like the Batmobile, and
something like that.
Lumpy, yeah,
but it just looks like.
I kind of looked at it like my favorite. I would also have to agree. The Michael Keaton one was overall probably my favorite because I mean Jack Nicholson too, and it was like it was this pretty solid movie. But I think that when you look at Batman as a rich man and you look at the Batmobile, it kind of looks like an old Rolls Royce with wings, kind of, right? So you look at I look at it like there's this power that he has because of the money that he has, and then I think what Christopher Nolan was trying to do, or whoever else was helping him make the movie. I think it was all about like showing how militarized Batman is. Yeah. And so that's why I think that that Batmobile. It's not very like appealing. But I don't really think that Hummers are appealing either. But I think it's just kind of like it's just kind of trying to show that power of military.
Yeah, like I like how they used that military angle to explain like the bat tech. That was cool. But just it's just the look of the Batmobile itself. It's just such a disappointment. I hate it.
It is very grounded in reality. Which some might say the Batman is even more so. But the background of that vehicle, because it is real, they did build like 4 of them. One to destroy, another one to run through a wall.
You talking about the other one's like the Nolan trilogy Batman, or
the Nolan trilogy?
Okay.
So they built 4 of them. One to run through the barrier that they shoot in the film. Another one to destroy, and 2 other ones just in case one breaks to do the stunts that they were filming at 65 to 70 miles per hour in Chicago. They took the inspiration of a Hummer, as Nate mentioned, but also had the Lamborghini Murcielago. Murcielago being a bat in Espanol. So they merged the two designs together with the Play-Doh, and that's what they came up with. So they did develop it, they made it, and the sounds that you hear from the car, that's not a creation in the sound room. That is the car.
Yeah.
That's why to me, I wasn't sold on it. In fact, I didn't even want to watch Batman Begins because as a Batman fan, this is not Batman. I'm not interested. So I didn't go for a while until my cousins in Texas when I was visiting. He said, we're bored, let's go watch a movie. He's like, fine, I'll go watch Batman. And I watched it. I'm like, wow. I gave it a standing ovation. I was the only one standing up clapping, but I'm like, this was amazing. And then it's like, no. Jack Nicholson's the Joker. I don't want to see the Dark Knight. And like, wow. So, okay, whoever this guy is pretty good. So, yeah. That's
all right. Yeah, we should probably start ending the show soon. I guess if you want to plug your show or anything like that before we go.
Yeah, absolutely. Anybody's interested can go to www.theandresegovia.com. You can follow me across the socials at the Andres Segovia. When I say that, I don't just mean big tech. You're not going to find me besides Instagram. So you can also find me on Parler, Gab, Getter, Minds, and now on True Social. So I was one of the early ones to get in. So it could be for me, I guess. But yeah, across everything, the Andres Segovia.
All right, Nate, you want to plug anything, your new show, anything like that?
Yeah, so I was and still am. I'm not done with Cubbyhole. CUBBYWHOLE.com is the website you can go to, and you can listen to my podcast in order, starting from 1, work your way forward. There is currently 53 episodes. I stepped away from the audio-only podcast that I was sharing with 2 other guys, Brandon and Douglas Martin, and made my own solo show. It's a new show called Outcasting, where I'm sharing bits of science towards freedom. And it's brand new. There's only 3 episodes so far. And it's basically just me explaining pieces of very sacred science that can help us move forward in a more positive world and, towards freedom, because, we're in a very negative, dark place collectively. And I think that, this type of information can help us climb out of the darkness, out of ignorance into a lighter place and co-create a more free environment. And so I'm really excited about it. And you can find me on YouTube under Nate Cap. That's NATEKAP. And just look for Outcasting, and you'll see all my content there, but also on the Cubbyhole website.
All right, cool. Benevolent, you want to plug anything, or are you good?
Oh, sorry. Like I was responding to the chat. No, I'm good. Like I've been really busy, so I haven't been able to really do anything else aside from what I do.
Yeah.
I just enjoy listening to you guys, and hopefully I think I did pick up a few different things here and there. And thank you for coming on. And anybody else that wants to come on here and share their perspective, that would be awesome. But once again, I'm thankful to be able to have people come on here and just be able to get their ideas out there.
Cool.
I really thank you guys for having me. A lot of stuff I spoke with today, I haven't said anywhere in any other interview yet, so this is a first for even me to share a lot of that stuff that I shared today. So,
even all your Batman stuff, or
yeah, that's exclusive to you. I went to the garage to pull that stuff out. I gotta show these props, so no one else has seen it. This is the first place they'll see it.
Yeah.
All right.
Appreciate you guys too, man. I just wanted to say that, and it was nice meeting you, Andreas. You got a lot of great work, man. So
cool.
Thanks. And I'd like to have you on the show too, Nate. We could talk random stuff, science, physics, whatever, man. I love it all.
All right, cool.
Awesome.
I guess that leaves me. I'm gonna have some merch made soon. I'm looking to do a music show. Be on the lookout for that. Also, I want to do a movie review kind of show soon. So I have to kind of get around to doing that.
I guess we'll just end it there. Thank you guys for watching. I'm Senor Filth, Nate Cap, Benevolent Asshole, and our guest Andres. And we'll see you another time. All right, see you. Peace.